G'day, SuperCoaches. This is the AFL SuperCoach show. You're in and out guide of the greatest game on earth. We've got round 18 in the bag, round 19 to preview. I am your host, Jaymz Clements, and joining me today are two of the brightest minds in the SuperCoach universe and a little fella. We've got Al Paton here. How are you, Al?
Am I the little fella?
No, the other
he
guy's the
always
little
calls
fella.
me that, but yeah. Maybe we both are, yeah.
That's the guru, Al Paton, and 4'2" and an attitude. It's the Stats Boy. What's going on?
Bit taller than that. Yeah, really good to be back. I haven't been on this since the early rounds. So I've got the call up. Must have been a few outs. I'm like the sub. I had the sub vest on for 15 weeks, but I'm
Billy
back.
Dowling
I'm back. Yeah, the Billy Dowling. I'll take that. He's a beast.
But we have also one of the really crucial aspects and brains behind SuperCoach. We have Fantasy Freako from Champion Data on later, which is really fun. Awesome. So obviously stick around for that. Deal with me. Listen to these smart brain guys and we'll go from there. All right, and remember this show is obviously proudly brought to you by SuperCoach Plus. Follow your SuperCoach scores live on game day. God, it's good to see them tick up, but when they're just not ticking along, you're like, this sucks.
Yeah, close the app.
You can see all your break evens, projected scores, and away you go. Check out the show notes for a link and subscribe away. Gentlemen, let's start it off with the wrap. Round 18 wrap, the heroes and villains. I've got a couple of easy ones.
Yep.
My heroes are always at home Noah Anderson. Simple as that. Just lock and load. At home Noah Anderson.
At home Suns, just in general.
Outside of that, my beloved Ned Moyle is one of my heroes.
This is a great...
Said no one ever, but you.
This is it. So Ned Moyle rips off 110 this week. I brought him in to replace Witsy a couple of weeks ago. I didn't have Jared Witz, but obviously this was part of the, I think the Jordan Sweet, just the Grundy, Gorn, just like the miasma of your rucks. And Witsy goes out. I think I was running Luke Jackson and Gorn. And I'm like, all right, this will give me a chance to move Jackson forward, just to have plug and play him as my F6. And Ned Moyle, 316K, boom. He's been fantastic for me, Al. I've enjoyed this greatly. And to be honest, that's one of the big reasons I got to 23-29 this week, because a lot of my other primos really let me down. Long, hard talk at the boys and just like, come on, lift your game. Mostly my villain being Harry Sheasel and Nick Dacos. The backliners, what are we doing here? What are we doing? 75 and 89, break-down hearts. The one that sticks out to me, though, is probably my pod. My pod from the start of the year has been Jason Horne-Francis. He has these incredible dizzying highs and some toasty gummy lows.
He looked really off on the weekend. Yeah.
He was so off, he's just starting fights.
Yep.
And he's like...
once he starts doing that, it's trouble.
He gets in his own head a bit. I think not good for SuperCoach.
He's got the haircut of a bloke who's starting fights on Hindley Street, and away we go. Like, what are we doing here? To the point where Ken Hinckley's had to sit him down and have a big old heart-to-heart. Father-son talk. We talked this out on the AFL Today show, footy dads.
Footy dads.
But Hornet broke my heart. 46, Al. 46! This was just... I tried to loop Lawson Humphries at 108, and I think by the time I'd gotten to go, oh, God, he got 108, and like going to switch it around, I couldn't loop it because I think maybe it was at the Saints game or something it started, so wasn't able to swing that around. But the heroes, villains, it was a lot going on this week. Jai Caldwell's as well. Just saying, Jai Caldwell.
He's been great,
Got a lot of time for Jai Caldwell. Al, heroes, villains, score.
It was an interesting weekend for me because I went hiking on Friday, went down to Wilson's Prom, lovely spot, and no phone reception from about midday Friday through to sort of late Saturday night. So just had to do my trades, set my team, and let it go to the universe.
Less stress on the
Well, it actually was, yeah.
You didn't have to think about it? Or?
It was kind of nice in a way that just, I didn't have to worry about it. But you get back and suddenly checking all the scores. And the first thing I thought when I went through them was like, oh no, I hope Tim didn't trade Adam Sard because he was going to.
Yeah.
And he went bananas. But I think fortunately he held fire on that one. So that was good news. But my team is just plodding along at this stage of the season, 2-2-8-2, and the rankings sliding down to 370. So, I mean, still having a good year, but, just losing ground a little bit at the moment. And the worrying thing for me is I'm now only 42 points ahead of the Phantom, who's absolutely charging in the other direction.
Rivalry.
I like this.
And the big difference really is that he brought in Lachie Neale about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And, I think I got LDU that week, so I can't complain. He's been a great pickup as well. But just people are going to be sick of hearing me complain about Matt Rao because I can't get rid of him.
Last 6 weeks.
I really wanted to trade him last week, but then we had all this carnage and I ended up trading Gorn. I also had McGovern. Obviously, we had Heaney out, and then Zach Fisher didn't come back, which is causing me problems. So had to hang on to him, and just 65 points. I mean, he's scoring. We talk about how well these rookies went on the weekend, and you get a supposed primo scoring 65.
What is he doing?
At home as well. Like that
Yeah,
just
exactly.
stinks.
Above the parallel, all that stuff. And then, when the Phantom's got Lockie Neal in that spot, or other people might have an Errol Goulden or someone like that. We'll get into some of those ownership numbers a little bit later, but that's just absolutely killing me. So this week, hopefully I can maybe try and get rid of him or at least get him onto the bench, but it might depend if, McGovern comes back, does Fisher come back, if I have to deal with some of these issues. So I still have 4 trades, which is good, but a few issues going on.
Few issues.
2 things with this. I love the idea of Al just going down to Wilson's prom and just like the sun shining on his face just 1 minute, his phone has got no reception.
Don't have to
He's
worry
like,
about SuperCoach.
I'm free.
Yeah.
I'm free of the shackles. This is great. Just having like one moment where he's just like, this is incredible.
Or is he holding up his phone on the top of the mountain? What's Luke Jackson on?
The flip side is then he gets beaten by Gilbert Gardner as well.
Yeah,
beloved Gilbert.
Thanks for bringing that up.
And also by me. I think this might be the first week I've outscored you this year, Al. You little ripper! Jimmy!
He's
from
back.
the clouds, we're on, boys!
I think that came up when I opened the app and it says, your head-to-head results this weekend. You've been beaten by Gilbert and Jaymz.
Oh,
That's not good. He was trying to give you just nice little win there.
Yeah, just this is a sympathy win
Yeah.
at the end of the season.
100%.
Stats guy, hero, villain, overall score. Score for
my
the round.
score, I'm glad I actually didn't play Al this week because I got 2 points less. So if I had to play you, I got 2-2-8-0. So literally 2 points less. If I was in a comp with you, I would have been filthy if I lost to you by 2 points. So not too good. And still need to finish my team just because of the carnage the last couple of weeks. So that's been a bit of a worry there. I'll go hero. My hero, I talked about him on the AFL Today show, Lawson Humphries. I thought he was awesome. His efficiency is just perfect for SuperCoach. He just gets so much ball behind the plate. Awesome. So 108 for him. Villain, Tom Green. I know he's still got 93 and you go, that's not a bad score. If you're getting 37 touches, you should be on at least 140, not 93. That is a massive villain for me. I'm still going to back him in for the next couple of weeks, even for vice captain and captain, but that was really filthy with that. You go 37 touches, 40% efficiency. I saw SuperCoach posted that one. The other one for me, I brought in Tim English, only got 85. So I was like, that's a decent pickup from Gawn. Obviously, Gawn was out and really disappointed that English was only at 85. Al did mention, though, he was only on 40 odd at 3/4 time.
Yeah, something like that. So, that's about when I got the reception back on Saturday night. So
I was worried that he was only going to get 50 odd, but 85 is not too bad, but that probably cost me 50 points as well without Gawn.
But so you've got English 85. I brought in the Nankit, just absolute top dollar. 107, okay.
You'll take
and
it.
And then Jimmy's got Ned Moyle.
I know.
Just wiping the floor with us.
I'm just saying, look, I've just been, foxing this entire year being bad at SuperCoach, just lulling you all into a false sense of security. Then bang, the Ned Moyle trade. Here we go. All right, outside of that, SuperCoach news, injuries and suspensions. Now, we dealt with a whole bunch of carnage last week. We do have a follow-up from the carnage, obviously. Isaac Heaney will be back this week, which is
Thank God.
very,
Yes.
very good. And he goes straight into, obviously, this Sydney team. Their biggest thing was like, how do we fit Luke Parker, Callum Mills, and Heaney? But it's like, turns out, pretty easy. You can...
They're all good players.
Exactly.
They
Deal
all
with a
can
couple of
rotate
injuries,
forward,
off they go. Gone. Al, he's out of his moon boot.
Yeah, so he was on the radio this morning saying, out of the moon boot, and the quote I've written down here is, it's day by day, I'll run today, I see who I'll pull up tomorrow, maybe run again Wednesday, then if I get picked, ... But he
No way, really?
Surely not. He also said the docs said it was going to be 2 to 3 weeks, and if it is 2 to 3, he'll take that, just making sure it's not 4. So I think that's probably more realistic, surely. A tripped fibula, it turned out to be. And he hasn't walked for a week. So we know, Gawn, very competitive animal that he is, but especially Melbourne went all right without him.
Yeah.
So surely they don't rush him back this week. But
They are playing in Perth. So, I don't know. I feel like...
They've had good games over there.
Good games, but
Won
at
a
the same
flag,
time,
yeah.
like Freo did absolutely delete that Demons team
Oh, yeah, I
a
forgot
couple
about
of
that.
months ago.
in Alice Springs, yeah.
That was with Gawn playing. So
Yeah.
maybe just go, Q in the rack, Gawn, rest
need
up
him.
this 1 week. Don't rush it back too hard. Outside of that, McGovern as well, talking about going back west.
I know.
Yeah, so the whole saga with him last week, I think on the show, we just thought he had some kind of rib lung issue, and we didn't know 100% what it was. Turned out West Coast described it as a minor punctured lung and some
There's
fractured
nothing minor
ribs.
about that.
Jeremy McGovern's like, minor?
Yeah.
Bro,
I
what?
can't breathe.
Dude, I can't laugh. What are we doing here?
Well, he wasn't allowed on a plane.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah,
So we'd actually
that's
talked
wild.
this out as well prior to this all happening. It's like, what does he do? He's not allowed to fly home. Just jump in the old, car or just get
His
a train.
wife came back over. Yeah.
We're trying to figure out like which one goes east to west And I'm like, it's the gun, isn't it? It's like, no, the gun goes north to south. It goes NT to SA, right? I think. I'm pretty sure.
That's that train spotting show that you do on Wednesdays, yeah.
Train Australia.
It's that slow TV where you just watch the train go across the Nullarbor with
like
Jeremy McGovern.
fisheye lens on the top of my head.
Yeah. Francis,
I'm like on a treadly after Jeremy McGovern. But so he got over to Adelaide, met his wife.
I think he drove to Adelaide, and then they were a bit worried about him
away.
driving all the way back himself. So yeah, wife came over, met him, and
his wife's like, "Come on."
That's a long slog, I reckon. For
might be his fiance. I think they're getting married later in the year. But still no actual timeline. The West Coast put 1 week on their injury list, so I held him. I mean, the way he's been talking in that whole saga, I don't know. Is he getting up this week?
I think
he was asked on Will Schofield had him on his podcast, and he just said, "Are you going to play again this year?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I definitely hope to." So that doesn't sound like coming back this week to me.
Yeah, it's also ribs. I just don't want and a punctured lung. I just don't want to risk it. For one more week, just give it 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then just go. I'm sitting out the rest of the season.
You don't want to end up like the trucker. So
but at the same time, for SuperCoach purposes, the simple idea is like it'd be great if it's 1 week and he comes back and you've held him.
Yep.
2 weeks. At what point do you go? I need to move on. That's the big question. Right?
That is tricky. So I brought in Colby McKercher last week, and he covered for McGovern in defence. Ideally, the theory was that I want to actually get Colby into my midfield, and then I can probably get him on and push Rail off the field. So if McGovern misses, Colby's still there. I could use him again, but yeah, it's not really ideal. So yeah, it'll depend on him. And the other one that there's a big watch on is Zach Fisher, because I held him when he was injured a couple of weeks ago, hoping he'd be back the next week. And then that was a bit of a watch during the week. And then he trained with the main group, and there was talk he'd be ready to go. And then North said he didn't quite come up, so he missed the team. But then he played in the VFL.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of, what are they doing there? Not a great sign if he's out of the best 23 potentially. So going early on Stats with Al here.
I think it needs a song. Stats
it does.
with Al. Stats with Al. Watch out now. It's Stats with Al. It's Stats with Al starring Al. Take it away, Al.
So close look at Zach Fisher's numbers in the VFL. He had 16 kicks, 11 of them were effective, 11 handballs, 6 rebound 50s, 5 marks, 5 intercept possessions, 0 tackles, and 109 SuperCoach points. So, I mean, that's not bad. Not exactly, bashing the door down to get back into the team. But then having said that, North wasn't great on the weekend. As a Kangaroos man, what do you think? Does he get back in?
I've been frustrated with him all year, but I think he'll come back in, especially at Marvel.
Against Carlton.
Against Carlton's old team.
Revenge game.
I don't think he's going to do anything.
No, Revenge SuperCoach is one of my big totems. I'm like, massive score incoming, Zach Fisher.
I think he will come back in, because at Marvel, that's the type of game that North play. We like to play running through McKercher, Fisher, and that. So I think he'll come back.
Good.
That's good news.
Yeah,
just a deep breath. Thank God.
So I mean, the other ones from last week, took Miller out. He'll be out for a while. If you didn't trade him already, then I think you have to. And the only one really, I mean, thank goodness there wasn't a lot on the weekend in terms of more injuries and things. But one to watch potentially is the MRO, what they do with Toby Bedford. Smashed Tim Taranto's head into the ground, so he's probably going to miss a week or two with concussion, you would think. And then what happens with Bedford? Do they crack down on him? And obviously not in a heap of SuperCoach teams, but he's been doing these big tagging jobs. So if he's out for a week or two, maybe that helps. They play Gold Coast and I've got GWS, that doesn't make sense. They've got Gold Coast and Melbourne the next couple of weeks. So might free up some of those guys, maybe a Noah Anderson type who would have copped the tag.
Away from home as well next week, so
they got no
could just be the week. See what happens.
Tag Matty Rao.
The other one, I guess, is there Charlie Cameron as well. Like whether or not he gets off on the good bloke clause again, unlikely. But he's not a massive SuperCoach scorer.
Maybe draft people have him.
Exactly, possibly, draft, etc. The interesting thing for me is those Brisbane forwards. Without Charlie Cameron possibly against Sydney this week, this gets really weird and really wonky really quickly. So I think that probably helps more the likes of Neil and Dunkley if they're slipping forward just that little bit more. We saw Neil on the weekend kick 2 goals as well.
Neil's been great in front of goal last couple of weeks.
So, I don't know, just keeping that in the old back in the noggin.
And it was around this time last year that the dangerous tackle became a big focus, and we saw Sicily and Merritt and these guys under the gun. So,
SuperCoach big names, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice one. All right, biggest talking points after round 18. I love these ones because the saviours, the trade-in options, the cheapies. We talked about Mateus Philippou, a.k.a. Mateus Lenny Hayes, Joey Montagna, Nick Rewalt Philippou, because of the way he's been scoring. At 266,000, I believe Abs Magic was going back and forth on the Philippou train all week, which was very fun to watch on Twitter. And then Lawson Humphries, as we've already talked about, 207. He's been fantastic. Al, some other trade-in options that are kind of cheap. Who do we like out of these ones? Sam Berry at 344. Dylan Shield at 390. I love the idea of Dylan Shield at 390.
Do you? I can't. The most inefficient man in the business.
Do you want to ride that train or not?
Oh, no.
That is a thrill ride. Toby Green, which is
He's sneaky. Yeah.
fascinating because he's 442. Tom Stewart's 506. I love these last two. Tom Stewart has been absolutely gunning it in the midfield for the Cats. And Toby Green, now this is a long-held theory. Having a kid, it's either
Helps, yeah.
it's either just going to push you like to up, next levels like Paddy Cripps, laughing that, crushed it for Coda, and then you could be Toby Green, have a kid, and completely fall off the face
He
of
just
the
wrecked,
planet.
yeah.
He's just like, I'm so tired all the time. I can't do my job.
How did your
I've been
booming
there,
left boot? How did your booming left boot go when you had kids, Jim? You guys talk about your booming left boot.
Yeah, my booming left leg got put in the closet, I reckon, for about 6 months just because I could barely move after having a kid. But Toby Green has been fantastic the last, 3 weeks?
Yep.
And GWS have turned around their season. They've looked great. He is a really sneaky, interesting, we're about to talk about pods, but Toby Green is really good. I love this one.
if you have to trade a Zach Fisher type, only the 442K. Talk about efficiency, how important that is in the SuperCoach formula. Tom Green has 37 touches, butchers the footy and ends up with 90-something SuperCoach. Toby Green, I think, had 13 possessions, but kicked 4 straight, had 4 or 5 other direct goal assists, and he ends up with 154. So
perfect, yeah.
We know what he can do. Obviously, it's a bit of a roller coaster with a player like him, but you're not paying too much. So if you're looking to get someone in the forward line, those 2 guys that you mentioned off the top were so good for people who brought them in as a bit of emergency cover, especially when we had all these guys out on the weekend. Philippou, 101 points in just horrific conditions over in Adelaide.
Awesome,
clearly St Kilda's best player, I think, there. And Lawson Humphries, unbelievable. You mentioned his efficiency on the weekend. He had 19 kicks, 18 of them hit the target. So
awesome, yeah.
Tom Green could learn a thing or two from Lawson. And he went up 90 grand. So, but he's only 207,000 if you need to, pull the emergency lever. Could you still bring him in? Yeah, that's such a huge thing for him.
Part, yeah.
Exactly. And if I've got a McKercher now, I could get Lawson Humphries, and then you can swing those two between the defence and the forward line. So maybe that helps me cover, McGovern for another week or two, sort of thing. So, I'm definitely looking at him this week. But yeah, that's a little bit more than I was hoping that I would have to pay. And just some of these other names. Shield obviously would be a huge pot at a massive risk, but he scored 100 in the 2 games since he's come back into the team,
good,
his price is still quite low because his only other game for the year he scored 5 points when he was the sub in round 10. Yeah, Berry's gone back into the midfield for the Crows and putting up some good numbers for only 340K. And then Stewart is just the safe, the opposite of kind of a Toby Green, where you're just going to get that 110, 115 points every week. He's got a great role now.
As well,
He just sort of takes the centre bounces and then maybe floats back and gets some of the stuff around the middle of the ground and the half-back line, which we know he's so good at. So, yeah, still like him that's still a really great price for him, even though he was sort of 450K a few weeks ago. So a few cheap options there, and guys that you could hopefully get with, maybe one trade, because now it's pretty hard to do the old downgrade, one down, one up with trades at a minimum.
Unless you're like our buddy Leo, who has 2 boosts and 1 trade remaining.
He's just too good for SuperCoach. He didn't even need the boosts.
It's amazing gear. All right, this is a L specialty because we are getting to the pointy end of the season, obviously. And what that means is you're actually looking for pods. Anti-pods, I love that as well. I love a good anti-pod.
Anti-pod.
If you've got too many people might have a dude, you're off him. Simple as that. Got to stick away from the anti-pod. Or if you just need that safety, you're sticking with anti-pod. But Al, have you got some big pods for us? Like, who are you looking at for this one? Because we've already mentioned my beloved Ned Moyle. But
how many teams is he in?
Exactly my question.
I'll have a look.
Let's have a look, Stats Boy. But it's like, these are the sort of dudes where you looked at the top 1% of SuperCoach players and sort of looking at some of the percentages of like the ownership of someone like Jai Caldwell. And like, these are the it's great to have that steady presence in your forward line, to have like one of those top basically top 6 forward for the season, of course. But can you do better? Like, that's the question, right? It's like, is there a pod out there that might just sort of pop off for the next 3 weeks or something? to sort of help you boost up the rankings or win some of these leagues?
Well, I was looking up these numbers just because trades are running low, and a lot of people have a finished team, or in air quotes, finished team, and it really comes down to your head-to-head matchups and people you're against in the rankings. Like, I'm trying to hold off the Phantom. It's like, if Bont scores well or Tom Green is a bit disappointing, it's like, well, that's annoying, but most other people have him, so it sort of covers you a bit. Yeah, so you're not falling too much. Or if he goes off, you love those points, but everyone kind of has him, so it doesn't make a huge difference in terms of rankings and head-to-head matchups. Someone like Dacos falls into a similar bracket, so it's looking at, well, who are the players you've got that are actually setting you apart? And obviously you're barracking really hard for those pods, and so I've got someone like a Jordan Clark in defence is in 19% of teams, in looking at the top 10%, so roughly 20,000 in the rankings, and Bailey Dale's in 27%. They both scored pretty well on the weekend, so that's great.
Yeah.
So they're maybe getting me ahead of some other teams. But then it can hurt you going the other way. So, I've got McGovern, who's only in 9%, and Matt Rowell, who I'm trying not to mention, but he's in 17% of teams. So that just absolutely kills you when he scores badly.
With him,
and hardly anyone else has him. That's really painful. And then I wanted to talk about the idea. So they're your pods, but then you've got anti-pods, which is who are the players that are highly owned that you don't have. So it's a bit like barracking for teams that you want their draft picks, so you want them to finish low. Who do you want to score not that well, because lots of other people have them and you don't? And you mentioned Caldwell. He's the one that stands out for me. He's now in 73% of teams in the top 10%.
Wow.
And I haven't got him. So the fact that he's scoring so well is really hurting me every week. So in terms of my team, the other highest owned ones, Dan Houston's in 57% of those teams and Nick Martin in 52%. So they both scored all right, especially Martin had a fantastic game on the weekend. So that sort of hurt me as well. And I looked up some numbers just in terms of the overall ownership for right up in the top 1%. So Sam Flanders is the most owned player. He's in 99.9% of teams in the top 1%. But that means there's 9 people who don't have him.
What are those 9? How are those 9 people in the top 1%?
It's incredible. So there's also 9 who don't have Heaney. There's 18 who don't have Dacos and 80 that don't have the Bont.
The 18 that don't have Dacos are probably like, we're laughing at the moment.
That's kind of worked out all right.
That the other week, but how do you don't have Heaney or Flanders? That's
that's amazing. So but it shows they're obviously still going all right. So you can, teams can be different, but it'd be a pretty hard watch trying to barrack against Ned Flanders every week. But those were the names that jumped out for me. And Errol was the other one who's in 45% of teams, and then Lockie Neal, amazing. Not quite a pod, you wouldn't say, but 35%, and that's the Phantom's huge point of difference. So when he's going off every week, and I'm looking at some of my guys, that's the big difference at this stage of the year.
It is so this is like when you're talking about those percentages, is the top 1% of coaches. And then even overall, like I think Lockie Neal's still only at like 16% of overall teams this year. It's like
crazy.
Win another Brownlow, and like next year he might be owned by 4%. Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is nuts.
Going backwards,
Dude's a weapon. But I think if you look at some of the past 3-round averages, like of the overall ownership as well, like the one that stuck out to me was Paddy Cripps is only at 8.5%. And you're like, that's fine. That makes a bit of sense. But he has been absolutely shredding the last little while. He's averaged 134.3 over the last 3 rounds, 115 over the last 5. So Tom De Koning's only in 7.4%, and obviously he had a massive run. And I do wonder if Carlton sort of just go, this whole Pito to ruck thing,
get rid of him.
That's not enough.
Yeah, that didn't really work, did it?
We're not really vibing on this because we're 3 and 5 when Pito plays. So TDK could be another pod, I guess, if you're looking at that sort of, if you want to downgrade from Gawn, if you didn't last week and you're like still nervous about that, I don't know, just a couple of names floating out there. And one of the ones that I always love is Josh Dunkley. He had a slightly quieter week this week, but with everybody on the Neil train, you have a Dunkley sort of just like popping up every so often just to really, really, really go nuts, especially at the Gabba. I think his home averages are chaos, so got a little bit of time for Josh Dunkley.
Nice.
Looking at Cripper here, 57 teams, that's 3% of the top 1% of coaches own Paddy Cripps.
Not bad.
I got Ned Moore up, 1.8%, Jim. So you're part of the one, just in overall. So 1.8%.
I want to start the Ned Moyle fan club at this point. I'll be the president, and we'll be laughing. We'll get Ned Moyle just hanging out. He'll just be going on, boys. I don't know. Just go and get us another 110, would you, Ned? All right, let's go have a chat with the Fantasy Freako himself. This is going to be awesome. Fantasy Freako from Champion Data coming up right now. All right, we are here with the man of the hour. It's Fantasy Freako. But before we do that, I just have to mention, we took the 4'2" with an attitude, 4'2" with an attitude little stats boy and replaced him with Patch
Hello.
for this chat with Fantasy Freako. It is the guru himself, Fantasy Freako, all things champion data. Freako, what is going on?
G'day guys, thanks for having me on. It's a good Monday. I had a good score this week, so yeah, looking forward to the chat.
I think the big question everyone has is, did you, just like everybody else, beat Al?
I did. I scored 2,366 this week, so it was a good week. 2,400 odd last week, so it's been a good couple of weeks to get that ranking up.
Not bad. I love this. I love having you on for this one because we get to go total wonk, which is why we've got Patch on here as well, because he's as wonky as they come. And obviously Al is just full wonk all the time. So, Al, what do you want to know the most? What do you want to dig into the most with Fantasy Freako?
Well, obviously, SuperCoach is a numbers game. It's all about the stats and the scores that we're all tracking so closely every week. And there are a lot of different elements that go into it. So we'll try and explain it and lift the lid a little bit over the next little while to help people understand how that system works and, why players score the points that they do. And we've already referred to things on the show. Tom Green has 37 touches but only scores 90-odd points. And so it's obviously there's a lot more to it than just you get points for a kick and a mark and a handball. So without putting you on the spot to sum the whole thing up in 30 seconds, but how did Champion Data develop the ranking points and the SuperCoach formula, and what are the key stats that we really need to be watching for our SuperCoach players?
Yeah, so the rankings formula was created back in 1999 when we first started capturing games. And essentially, it's just an algorithm which measures the effectiveness of a player. So it's based on quality and not quantity. And as you mentioned, Tom Green on the weekend, 37 disposals, but the quality just wasn't there. So efficiency is king in SuperCoach. So ineffective disposals, you get 0 points for that. Clanger disposals, you get negative points for that. And for all of the disposals that are effective, you get positively rewarded for that.
And to answer one of the big questions out there in the community, are disposals and possessions the same thing, or do they get scored separately?
No, so disposals and possessions are two different stats. So disposals is getting rid of the ball and possessions is how you win the ball. So, for example, if you take an uncontested mark and then the siren goes and the quarter ends, then you'll have one more possession as opposed to disposal because you don't get rid of the ball. So they don't have to marry up. They don't have to equal the same possessions and disposals, and quite often they are different.
And the SuperCoach rewards ways that you win the balls. Obviously, we know contested possessions score really well.
Yeah, contested possessions are worth, quite a bit more points than uncontested possessions, which is why if you are looking at midfielders and guys that win a lot of contested ball, generally they're going to be scoring better than some of your more outside players. Like Andrew Gaff in his day, he'd accumulate 35 touches a game, but he was very outside, a lot of uncontested marks, handball receives, which is why he may not have scored as well as, say, someone like a Chris Judd who won a lot of his ball in a contested manner.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions you hear and see, about SuperCoach scoring? Obviously, a lot of people get, very ants in their pants about my player should have scored more, or, why are they, losing points on the bench? Are there any really big misconceptions that kind of irk you a little bit when it comes to the scoring system?
I think the one that always gets asked on Twitter is, why did this player score more points than this player in another game? And you can't compare one game to another because they're two completely different games. There are a lot of factors that go into scoring, and if you are going to compare, say, one player to another, it's got to be an apple with an apple or a pear with a pear. So, for example, if we're comparing scores from the Sydney and North Melbourne game compared to the Bulldogs and Carlton game, they're two completely different games. One was close and one was a blowout. So, yeah, you can't really compare two players from two different games.
Yep, and then the scaling is obviously different for each game as well, in that you've got the raw stats that will come out, and one game might have a total of 3,400 points, and we're talking before a game might have 3,150, and that scaling happens right across the games. You can lose or gain points on a bench, or you can have a big difference at the final siren.
Yeah, it can, and I'll use that sort of. I'll use those two games as an example. So each game has a match pressure factor. So this dictates how scoring goes. The match pressure factor starts at 1, and then it fluctuates up and down depending on what the margin is. So that game between Carlton and the Bulldogs, it was a relatively close game, and the match pressure factor was probably about 1.5, 1.6 in that last quarter. And say Patrick Cripps comes out, he has 10 disposals in that last quarter, kicks a goal and scores 45 points. Whereas someone like Harry Sheasel in that Sydney North Melbourne game, he had 12 disposals in that last quarter, but because that match pressure factor was about 0.5, his stats weren't worth as much. So he only scored 16 points on the weekend from 12 disposals in that last quarter. So again, even though I said before you shouldn't be comparing players from two different games, but what I'm doing here is showing you that the match pressure factor has a real impact on what players score.
So what you want is your players to be impacting the game when the margin is close and when the game is decided. So in a match like that North Swans game that you're talking about, that was early on, and everything after half time wasn't worth as much. Whereas in a game that's really tight at the end, you can get 2 or 3 really crucial touches and can be worth a lot of points.
Yeah, spot on, Alan. I'll also probably touch on Errol Goulden. So last week against the Saints, I think he had 20 disposals to 3-quarter time, and he was on target for a really good score. But he only had 1 disposal in that last quarter in a game that was really close, and I think he finished on 90. So it just shows you it doesn't matter how well you perform. If the game's really close, that's when you can get a really good point boost if you do impact the game.
And yeah, I think Pat's touched on it as well about scores can fluctuate up and down a bit, even if you're sitting on the bench, or sometimes a player gets injured and misses half the last quarter and their score goes up or goes down. And it's all that scaling that you talk about, the 3,300 point rule, where every game has to be worth the same number of points.
Yep, spot on. So, I'll just use another example. Let's just say Friday night, Nick Martin, he's on 100 points at 3-quarter time, best player on the ground, and then he gets injured and doesn't play the last quarter. But he might end up on 110 points because of the scaling, he's going to get rewarded accordingly and have his score gradually go up, even though he's on the bench.
You mentioned Chris Judd before, Freako.
Yes,
and
Chris Judd.
I'm a man of Judd, a Judd man. That's how I roll. That's how it operates. Do you have a favourite player in the past? So someone who's not playing right now, but one that you just have like a shining example as a SuperCoach player that just stands out to you in your brain?
I can answer that one by saying Gary Ablett Jr. Absolutely love Gary
Should
Ablett
I make
Jr.
it the non-Gary Ablett Jr. division?
It's the Gretzky rule.
Yeah, it's the Gretzky rule, yeah.
Actually, I'll give you another one. Barry Hall in his day was a pretty good scorer. So if you go back 10, 15 years, the key forwards of the game were really good in SuperCoach. So you had Barry Hall, you had Jonathan Brown, you had Warren Treadray. These guys were hitting 120 points pretty much every week.
Also, Brent Staker.
And yeah. Yeah, I won't go to
So is that has the scoring changed, or has the game changed and that we don't see those regular scores from key forwards anymore?
I think the game has changed. So, these days, if you look at the disposals per game, they'd be a lot higher now than they were 10 to 15 years ago. But back then, the key forwards dominated, contested marks. They were kicking lots of goals. The common medalists were generally nudging close to 100 goals, whereas now, it's 60, 70 odd goals at best. So, yeah, it was a different game. The game has changed over the years, and I guess SuperCoach scoring has reflected that.
Have you noticed much change over this season? We've, spoken a bit about players like Caleb Sarong and, Matt Rowell, who started the season really hot and have now kind of dipped away. Has that been something that's been, a lot of midfielders have done that, especially the last couple of weeks where all of our captaincy options have disappeared. Has there been a trend towards scoring and defence? And is there a reason for that, you think? Is it a gameplay thing, a stats thing? This is the broadest question I could possibly ask you. But basically, why is my team bad?
Yeah, good question. Look, it's not so much a gameplay thing. I think you got to look at each player individually. So you mentioned Caleb Sarong. So the reason why Sarong scored so well in the first 10 rounds is he was hitting the scoreboard. So in his first 10 games, he had 15 score assists, whereas since round 11, he's only had 4. And the volume just isn't there either. So he hasn't reached 30 disposals since round 10. I think it was against St Kilda. He's gone under every game since. So it doesn't take much for scoring to drop off. And if you are slightly down in, say, 3 or 4 areas, then obviously your score's not going to be as good. And we've seen that the last few weeks with Sarong. I mean, I picked up Sarong probably at the worst possible time. I think I got him around 9 or round 10. And, his scores haven't been great over the last few weeks. And you also mentioned someone like Luke Ryan. So it was the first time this season that he hasn't had an intercept possession, Luke Ryan, on the weekend, which I just looked up before. And his scores also have dried up. And, again, it's accumulation. He was generally getting, 25, 26 disposals a game early on in the year, but he's only gone over 20 twice since round 10. And teams are putting a bit of time into him as well. So on the weekend, I think he had Blake Hardwick on him. A few weeks ago, he had Ben Long. Now, they're not tagging him, but they're making him accountable, and he's not taking those easy uncontested marks as we've seen him take across the year.
You mentioned, or perhaps mentioned Matty Rowell. I mean, he seems to be down just about every category you can imagine. Would that be a fair assessment?
It is. So at the start of the year, he was winning a lot of contested ball, and his volume was high. So he's winning high 20s, low 30s, and his tackling has also dropped off over the last few weeks. So if we think of Matt Rowell, we think of the guy that goes in, wins a hard ball, has those tackles, but he hasn't been doing that as much. I think probably more so around the last 6 or 7 weeks anyway.
And one player that has dropped off more from last year to this year that's a bit of a mystery is Tim English. He's had some good games, but then some poor ones. Is there something you can put your finger on to say what's going on with him?
Again, I'll use the word volume. Like last season, I owned English for most of the year, and the one thing he did was generally, nudge over 20 disposals, but his ball winning hasn't been the same this year. A slight drop-off in his scoreboard impact, his tackles, and also his effectiveness in and around ruck contests. So that's probably the main thing with Tim.
Nice one. Patch, anything else?
I just wanted to finish it up with just a few kind of quicker fire questions, just, very common themes, but do you guys have favourite players that you then give extra points to? Just slide into the back end of the system, you're 2 points down in your league and you just, up Zach Butters by 3 points. Is that something you guys do?
No, definitely not. I mean, we've got 12 people working on every single game, so it's impossible to sort of fudge the numbers and give you a player extra points. But no, definitely not. I mean, I'll use Marcus Bontempelli as an example there. He's probably the one we often get a lot of questions about. And I think the reason why Bontempelli is so good is he does a lot of the things that go unnoticed. So I'll just bring up 2 key stats here for him. Smothers is one of them. So if we look at the last 3 seasons, he's had more smothers than any other player in the competition. And the other one is the contested knock-on, which is a really important stat. As a raw figure, it's worth 4 points. Over the last 3 years, he's had 103 contested knock-ons. The next best is 46. Wow. So he's had almost 3 times as much as any other player. And, I mean, you can watch the game of footy and you can say, why is Bontempelli dominating? And as I said, he does all these things that just go unnoticed to the naked eye. Like, I was watching the first crack last night, and Joey Montagna had a bit of a 30-second spiel on this as to why he's such a good player. And you just see the vision of it. He does it all the time. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't, but he's always looking to move the ball on and keep the game flowing.
And those contested knock-ons are like when you're not actually taking the ball into possession, but you're knocking it to a teammate while it's in the pack. Is that what that is?
Yeah, exactly. Even if it's just a transition play, like if there's someone on him and he's knocking the ball and someone like a Caleb Daniel comes through or a Jack McRae and they gather it and they have a disposal, then he gets credited with a contested knock-on. So sometimes they're not as obvious as other times, but yeah, he's the best player in the comp at doing that.
Yeah. And my last one, do you have a favourite stat? Like Al's discovered the ruck smash recently, which has kind of blown his mind and he won't stop talking about it. Do you have a favourite stat that might not be as well known or is just a weird, quirky one that comes up very infrequently that is just your favourite?
I think my favourite is the hit out to advantage to a score assist. So if you've got a forward 50 stoppage, Max Gawn taps it down to Petrarca. Petrarca kicks a goal. So Gawn in that situation will get a hit out to advantage and he also gets a score assist. So for a ruckman, that's probably the most complete play you can have.
Yeah. And you tweeted about another one during the last week, which again was something I wasn't really across, which is the ruck hardball get, which is, you see Nank and these guys do it quite a lot where they actually just grab the ball out of the ruck. So, there's all these different stats categories. You sort of touched on a couple already of underrated stats. Are there any that people probably overrate when they're watching the game, just on the TV or to the naked eye?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they overrate. I mean, every stat's important, and I guess if you're watching a game of football, whatever happens on the field, we have a stat for it. For example, if you're running down the wing and you're taking a bounce and then suddenly the ball bounces in the wrong direction and it goes out of bounds, then there's actually a stat for that. It's called a no-pressure error, so you lose points from your score for something like that. On the positive side, we also have a stat called a credit, so that's just rewarding someone for doing something positive on the ground. And an example of that is, let's just say someone's having a shot at goal and the defender's running back with a flight of the ball and they just get a little fingertip on it and it goes through for a behind, then that player will be given a credit, which is a positive stat, so you get points awarded for that. So, yeah.
Also like Dougal Howard last weekend running back and landing in the cheer squad. Would have picked up a credit for that?
Yeah, he would have, because obviously he touched the ball and it was a rush behind, so there was no goal to the Swan. So, yeah.
Could have also picked up a hot dog while he was there.
Those quirky stats.
Nice.
I mean, one we were just talking about before we came on here was if I guess there's always a tiny bit of subjectivity involved in the formula, but as you say, you've got 12 people working on it. But judging whether a kick is effective or ineffective, and sometimes you might you're watching your own player and they kick it inside 50 and you think, oh, this is great, they're going to get points, and then the forward drops the mark and you're like, oh, it's just killed him. How do you account for those sort of situations?
Yeah, for those types of kicks, especially if it goes long inside 50, I mean, it's got to go to a 50-50 contest or better for the team. So it's got to be towards the team's advantage. If it isn't towards the team's advantage, then it just gets deemed an ineffective kick. And if you look at, say, accuracy, for example, if a player's having a shot at goal from outside 50 and the ball falls short, then they get an ineffective shot at goal. And as we know, ineffective kicks are worth 0 points. So, yeah, it's got to be to the advantage of the team for it to be effective.
I like this. We could call that the Sam Walsh. Away we go. Yeah, he was good last week. I'm just being fair.
So that kick's then labelled as ineffective, even if, say, a teammate marks it next to the point post, where he's obviously not passing it. He's having a shot at goal, fades to the left. Ruckman's on the line, takes the mark. Does that then become an effective kick because somebody else has done something good to rescue him, or is it still an ineffective kick because it's fallen short?
No, it's still an ineffective kick. So if the player's intent is to have a shot at goal, and I mean, a lot of the times you can sort of argue it either way, but we just go based on what we see. So in that situation, it is an ineffective shot at goal. So the player taking the mark, obviously, the kick, to the player won't be an assist either if it's deemed an ineffective kick.
Well, but if you were trying to hit up a forward and they're on their own and it's the kick is good but the forward drops it, are you penalised for that?
No, they're not. So if the kick is effective in that situation and the teammate drops the mark, then the teammate gets punished with a drop mark and you lose points for that, but the player kicking to him doesn't get punished for the drop mark. He still gets his effective kick. So, yeah, it's based on the outcome and not the result.
Nice. This just gives me so much more like breadth and width to just start blaming everybody. It's like, this is great. I love it. All right, Al, any more?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, you touched on, Patch already asked about favourite players over the years. I mean, there have been the classic champion data style players, like Tommy Rockcliffe was always a classic. Are there any at the moment coming through that you really enjoy watching and eye off to pick in your team maybe this year or in the future years?
I think Harley Reid's the one. He's probably the one that comes to mind straight away. And we've seen him already this year have some big games. And as he gets more games under his belt, as he starts having more impact, I think we're going to probably be picking him from next year onwards. But, yeah, I think he's probably the main one.
Nice one.
Lovely.
Tom de Koning, I'm just saying. Tom de Koning, come on. Just play him solo ruck. We'll smash it out of the park.
Well, yeah, can we just finish on that? Like, what from a SuperCoach point of view, we just see Tom putting up these insane numbers, but then obviously it's a juggling act for Carlton, whether they play one ruck or two rucks. He's kind of a unique player, isn't he, Tom, the way he scores as a ruckman?
He is unique, and I think the one part of his game that deserves recognition is when he is rucking on his own, he wins a lot of contested ball. Like you mentioned, the ruck hard ball get before. He does that a lot when he's rucking. And someone like, Lloyd Meek also does that quite a fair bit as well. But De Koning, like his ability to sort of just impact the game around the ground is obviously a key strength. And, if he is playing in that ruck position, he does give Carlton first use quite often as well, because his tap work probably doesn't get the recognition either. So I think it was last year I looked at him as a ruckman. I think he was a second best hit out to advantage ruckman in the comp at centre bounces. So that's another part of his game he's quite good at.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's hard looking at him and going, this is what I want Luke Jackson to be. Luke, can you play in the ruck more? But
as long as Sean Darcy's not playing, Luke Jackson will score well, because his scores are really good when Darcy doesn't play. But in saying that, Darcy will come back into the team this week after his week out.
not unless I get to Fremantle first with a crowbar.
Going to save a season somehow, Patch. I like this. All right, here's a freak. Thank you for jumping on with us, Fantasy Freako. This has been awesome and very illuminating for a moron like me. Just sitting here going, I don't know what is going on, but this is awesome. So thanks for jumping on.
Thank you, Freako.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, how good was that chat with the Fantasy Freako? Al, he is a weapon. You'd love to have that chat. It's always good. Always insightful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps you just understand where the points are coming from each weekend, and obviously that can only benefit in terms of deciding which players you want in your team.
Nice one. All right. A bloke who's taken a bit of time off at a pretty crucial part of the season. But really,
Interesting move.
It's not that bad, I guess, because the Phantom usually swings by to talk Bubble Boys, and he's not going to do it because he's on leave. Just slacking off. Simple as that. So let's talk some Bubble Boys either way. Zane True. Interesting vibes here.
He was awesome. Yeah.
He was gunning it, right? So what did he score? 94 on the weekend. Break even now of minus 36. Al, what do we think about Zane True?
I mean, the Phantom was telling us, and then he decided to just not even bother calling in, but that, we don't really need Bubble Boys at this stage of the year. In terms of how much money they're going to make, doesn't really matter. But he is the most traded in player at this early stage of the week, Zane True from the Eagles. As you say, 94 points, 21 disposals, 8 tackles on the weekend. That was his second game. His first game was back in round 12, and he didn't score very well in that match. But I guess maybe he's part of the new look midfield under Jared Schofield over there. He had 15 centre bounces, so 138k. He's mid only though. I think ideally you'd want to bring in a DPP if you could. So there's a couple of other guys on the bubble if you really needed one. Joe Fonte at GWS. He's a defender, 117k. There's not much else around, but I think this stage of the year, the other thing you could seriously entertain is bringing in a floating donut, which is a guy who you don't expect to play, but they're as cheap as you can possibly get, and hopefully they play later in the round so you can use them to loop for captains and get scores off the bench, and also to flip players between lines. And probably the standout there is Locke Rawlinson at the Eagles. He's a small forward. Looked up his VFL or waffle numbers, and he's sort of scoring 50s and 60s most weeks. Might get a go at some stage, but chances are he probably won't. But yeah, he could be handy. And we know Saad El Hawley at the Bombers. A few people have brought him in just for that def mid link at 102k. So those are some options. But yeah, Zane True is probably the number one rookie of the week if you're looking to bring one in.
Yeah, especially if he's standing in the midfield. He looked good, but his score might be a bit up and down.
Just want to give an honourable mention to my beloved Sean Manor.
We haven't talked about him.
Sean Manor from heaven has just come out of absolutely nowhere. He's been on my bench all season. And,
that's amazing timing for him to come in.
I've loved every second of this last 2 weeks because he's ripped off 118 and 75. So he's third and fourth game. So he has gone up to $246,000 out of absolutely nowhere, having only played round 1, round 2, round 17 and 18.
Incredible.
He looked so nervous at the start as well. So he just built into it.
This is great. Mature age, rookie from Werribee out there.
Gets lots of tackles as well.
And he's got the that mid-forward swing as well, so it's perfect.
Awesome.
Loving Sean Manor. So I think he ended up on field for me this week as well with the Heaney.
Yeah, it would have been for a lot of
worked
people.
out pretty well, so happy days there. Right, quick fire round. Gentlemen, strap in. What score would you take from Billy Dowling this week to bench Matt Rowell, Al?
This is talking about using those zeros on the bench. You got someone like Billy Dowling playing on the Friday night. I could put the emergency on him, and if he scores well, I could flip a zero onto the field and take someone off the field. In this case, if I still have him, the obvious candidate would be Rowell. So the question would be, how many points would you need from Dowling? If he scores another 102 or whatever he got on the weekend,
you take that.
Take that. What if he scored 85 or 75.
I don't know why in my head I've just got 78. I don't know, Matt Rao, maybe 80, maybe just 80 on the dot because Rao, what is he? I think the last 6 weeks, 82 and under or something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe it's that 82 because he hasn't got over that mark, I'd probably say.
And Gold Coast on the road as well, so it's just like, nah, I'd probably take
And he
it.
even lost his centre bounces on the weekend, Rao. So if he's not getting those, I don't know how else he's going to score points.
All right, flip side. Lawson Humphries, what's the score you're going to take to loop out Clayton Oliver?
Yeah, that's
Just
a tricky
saying,
one.
because you have the Cats playing on Saturday night against the Dogs at GMHBA, and then you have Melbourne playing out at Optus Stadium on Sunday afternoon. Just
Clary
saying.
looked really good, so I'd be saying 90 odd. That's what I would say.
Well,
But I think
this is where it can get messy because I know some people who did this on the weekend with Lawson Humphries and they took that score and they took Dan Houston off because he's been a bit down lately.
Yeah.
And then he had about 105 points at three-quarter time and they were thinking, this is the worst thing I've ever done. And then Houston hardly scored in the last quarter, so it worked out. I think they lost maybe 5 points. But it can be a stressful
risky,
exercise.
yeah.
It can gain you points, but it can blow up as well. But, I mean, if you scored 108 again, I'd take that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I love the. I've got the floating donut in the midfield of Hugo Garcia for the Saints still. So he hasn't been traded out yet. You know, he's on watch. Just saying, but just keep an eye.
But yeah,
on
sometimes
that
they can be handy to keep them for this.
Might as well,
Definitely can be. Tom Green disposals versus his score this week. How are we feeling? Is he going to score more than his disposals?
Well, yeah,
count?
you were big on this. How many disposals does he need to crack the ton?
72? No. He even earlier in the season, he was pretty efficient. I think even if he gets 60, 70%, which isn't amazing, he's still going to get over that 110, 115. So I'm backing him in this week, 30 plus, but at that 70% disposal efficiency, he'll be watching the show and be like, I need to live for the boys. So
70%,
I think,
take that.
I think he'll go all right this week.
He had 109 against Gold Coast earlier this season.
Yeah.
So,
And 160, I think, the time before. Or something like that.
are we playing Philippou on the field, Al?
Yeah, well, this is, I thought, just because a lot of people played him, who brought him in this week because you had to.
Yeah.
But now you get Heaney back and it maybe depends what happens with Gawn, these kinds of things. Maybe that pushes him back to your bench. But is he too good for the bench? It depends on when do the Saints play. We might try and loop him on because you could take off
the loops.
take off a Kerno or someone like that.
Unfortunately, they play
well.
really early. That's the first Saturday game. So they play the West Coast Eagles Saturday 1:45. So you've only
You're
got
not going to swap Caldwell or
It's a bit
and stuff
tough.
like that.
But at least you can at least get a look at him if you want to, have the E on him at least
Yes,
and then sort
exactly.
of go the loop. So don't mind that. Don't mind that at all. And would you play Humphries on the field? We sort of hit on this if you're going to switch somebody else.
I genuinely think he can get another 100. Just the way his role is perfect for SuperCoach. So,
At home against the Dogs as well.
but it may be another emergency loop because I feel like that's the
that
safe
might be the
option,
safer
right?
way to do it. But and especially if you had, like, if I had him, I would feel so much more comfortable about just hanging on to McGovern for another week if I had to or whatever.
Yep.
Because he's just perfect cover. It's worked out fantastic if you've got him or a Manor who you can just bring on. I mean, Dowling was great on the weekend. At least I've got him, but I don't have the other guys.
Yep.
Nice one. I have both. Feeling great for the first time all year. This is awesome. As long as Kruger keeps playing as well, I've got coverage on each line. Last one. What does Luke Jackson score with Sean Darcy back against Melbourne, who could be without Gawn? What do we think? Stats boy?
Another revenge SuperCoach.
This is a revenge one. I love this.
There we go, revenge. I don't mind him for a big one. I won't say over. I'm going to say 95, which you'll probably still take in your forward line with not too many gun forwards. Yeah, I'll go 95. I think Sean Darcy back isn't going to get him up to that 110, but he can still score right, especially with no Gawn. They don't have a ruckman, really. Petty is not a ruck, so I don't know. Unless will they bring in Fullerton or something like that? Possibly, because they need. Like, how are their rucks going to go against Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson? That's what I'm confused about.
I mean, no one's got Darcy now, surely, but you could back him in for about 100 hit-outs this week.
Yeah.
116 for Luke Jackson last week. Looked awesome in a loss down there in Tassie. I love him for this week. I think he
he'll
goes
be all right,
absolutely ham, and I think they smash Melbourne again. They're at home.
At home as well.
Well,
Yeah.
he can kick 4 goals. Let's go, Luke Jackson.
Yeah.
Revenge! Right. Captain's call
Ooh.
for this week ahead. Mine is very, very straightforward. I think Butters is the pick for me for Port up against the Tigers on Saturday evening. At home, the Port just sort of clinging onto the 8, just with the fingertips. Richmond getting trounced royally week in, week out, Al.
They won the inside 50s yesterday.
Played
So,
really well on
take
the
small
weekend.
wins.
I think, they actually played well.
It's probably not ideal. I think the Giants had about 30-something inside 50s and still scored well over 100. So some defensive issues there, but they're fighting some small wins.
Yeah.
So Butters running rampant sort of feels like my vibe. For
He does.
the
He does
VC.
love playing the Tigers, though. Fair
The
to say.
VC on Saturday. Stats boy, I think you brought up his last 2 games against the
Yeah,
Tigers.
so that's why I'm going to put him as captain. I'm even just tempted just to put captain, not even worry about it else. He's got 175 and a 158 last 2. Yeah,
Not
against
bad.
them. Yeah.
My C would then probably go to Sarong against the Ds
Yep.
on Sunday afternoon. I don't really want any bar of the Sydney Lions game. I think that's 2 really, really good teams. And it feels like just a bit of a
cancel
roll of the
it.
dice of like, is it going to be a Neil game? Is it a Goulden game? Because Goulden's been fantastic. 142 this week was unreal. Outside of that, even the Blues against North, I think North, after copping an absolute beating at the hands of Sydney last week, Carlton will be out for a bit of, blood after losing back-to-back games as well. But North will probably play them tough. It's like a weird late Sunday game.
How many does Charlie Curnow kick after 3-7 on the weekend?
He's going 10.
Aiden
He's going
Call's
10
shutting him
straight.
down. Nah.
10 straight. Aiden Call's going to shut him down.
Just, I'm joking. He'll kick at least 4 or 5.
But I think I'll go Sarong with the C up against the Ds because I think that'll be a bit more free-flowing. And I think he's sort of at this point where obviously we've seen some of his scores at home this year. He's dropped off pretty
off a bit,
dramatically
yeah,
the last
yeah.
2 months. You might just look back and go, hey, when did Jim bring him in? That's when
When
he
he dropped
fell
off.
off.
Yeah.
Away we go. But I'm probably just going to try to bank on Butters with the VC. Al, you got any vibes?
Yeah, Butters is the clear standout for me. I don't think I've got anyone that I love after that on the Sunday. I mean, I don't think we can really trust Sarong maybe or Luke Ryan. They're just sort of more than 95 to 100 now at the moment. So with the captaincy, I mean, Walsh against North maybe, but he's pretty
He's been
up and down.
Yeah, up and down, yeah.
And depends if maybe Will Phillips didn't play at the weekend, so there's no tagger, so that would help. But looking at who plays earlier, I mean, the Bont always you have to consider, but he plays at the same time as Butters. I mean, we're just not even talking about Nick Dacos anymore. The SuperCoach Plus projection doesn't like him against Hawthorn at all. This is sort of the replay of the game last year where he was absolutely trounced by Finn McGuinness, but he's not playing at the moment for the Hawks, so maybe.
Did you
but
take a risk on Caldwell possibly Friday night? I'm just trying to think
Well,
of
if I
Friday
had
night. No, if you had him, yeah, sorry.
what about Zach Merritt? I mean, he's
Merritt as well? Yeah.
he really hot and cold last couple of weeks. So there's a few like that. I mean, Merritt's one I would consider definitely for the VC, and then Butters is a pretty safe backup, I think.
The Sarong one's a fascinating case as well. He's down to 527,000.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
he was flying in the middle part
He's
of the
ripped
season.
off 85, 84, 99 the last 3 weeks. But earlier in the season at home, he had 170 against the Lions.
Not bad.
He had 125 against the Crom, 117 against the Eagles, 140 against the Dogs, 150 against the Swans. That is absolutely insane. And then 91 against the Pies. He had in that Traeger Park game in Alice against Melbourne where they absolutely killed them, he only had 102.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like from then on, he had 121 at
struggled
home
since,
against
yeah.
the Suns again. So I'm just hoping that roll the dice at home. Sarong goes off. Nice one. Head to head. Let's do it, Al. It's a game of names. It's a name game.
Well, I think that last week's got scrubbed from the record, didn't it? So
Yeah,
there was
there was no tape. No.
exactly. So I don't know what happened last week.
We actually forgot to write down what we had gone head to head in. So we had to check the tape. And the tape proved me very right. This was great.
Al was trying to edit
Al's
the
like
YouTube.
deleting the YouTube as I'm listening to it. Like it's all over. I think Al we stuck with the insanely fun North Sydney game.
Good for SuperCoach
Good for
game,
SuperCoach game,
Yep.
basically.
Which it was if you had a heap of Sydney players.
Exactly. So Chunley Warner, my beloved Chad Chunley Warner, absolutely crushed it. Could have kicked 6 goals, I reckon, in that game as well. But Sheasel did not have a great one, Al. So it might have been a 55-point difference between
Yeah,
the two.
maybe
So.
that's very stiff. Sheasel's been great.
And this week we've talked about them as well. So this week we're going to go head to head was the on-field rookie. So if you have to get one of these guys on the field, which one would you rather? I've gone with Lawson Humphries because I have Lawson Humphries, and Al, you have Billy Dowling.
Yes, I do have Billy Dowling in my team, and as I said, I will be at least putting the emergency on him on Friday night. So hopefully he can pull out another big score. He's a real last quarter specialist that's turned in, kicking big goals in sort of close games and boosting his score that way. He was great on Saturday night, so hopefully he can pull out another big one.
Nice one. I just trust Lawson Humphries down at GMHBA. I think the
Yeah,
Dogs,
his role,
he'll love it down there. He'll be fantastic again. And hopefully, I'll just try to loop him, obviously, as well, if he does do very well. Because I think at the moment, fingers crossed, I don't need him on field. So touch all
Geelong
of
as
them.
well. Their game plan last week was literally just to chip it around, and every second ball was going to him. So hopefully that happens again.
My friend Dan Batten too has done a great read on Lawson Humphries. Go and check that out.
check that out,
Maybe look
yeah.
up his Twitter for the Geelong Addy. But yeah, I think he was playing Waffle Reserves
He
like
was,
12
yeah,
months
yeah.
ago, and another genius recruiting move by the Cats. They pull these off all the
Pulled him out of
time.
nowhere. Like that was like Tom Stewart, obviously
Yeah.
one of the best Cats players of all time, was just playing like Rezzies as well. Like, how do they do that?
I love it. They're just like, we'll just get every dude who looks like a carpenter surfer.
Yeah,
Done.
It works.
Lock it in. Monday moves before we go. What is your Monday trade? I have 2 remaining trades.
Ooh.
So unless I'm forced to, I will not be using anything this week. Al?
I have 4, so I can use 1 or 2, and I had this lined up all weekend. I thought Jai Clark's just been sitting there. He's made as much money as he's going to make. I'll trade him down to Lawson Humphries, and I'll have to pay more than if I'd got him last week or the week before, and I should have got him. But that'll still give me that nice defence mid swing. We know how well he's been scoring, and then I should have enough left over. If Fisher doesn't play, I could turn Fisher into Caldwell, another move I should have made a couple of weeks ago. But the prices are all going in the wrong direction. Humphries going up 90 grand in 1 week,
crazy.
and I'm out by about $2,000
Oh.
on making that move. So
Can you put your own money in?
Just top it up.
That is a lot of money for Lawson Humphries, but he's pretty good.
I'll have to consider that. But so I'm not really sure. And it might depend if McGovern's still out. There's a few variables going on. If Fisher, hopefully he comes back, that might save me. But
Yeah, I reckon he will, yeah.
I mean, the other option would just be to trade Matt Rao, just get rid of him, just trade him straight to
anyone.
Lawson Humphries.
Oh, that's not a bad shout.
I mean, I would have to play Humphries, or maybe I could loop him with a Billy Dowling or something like that. But I mean, I'm not losing points doing that the way Matty Rao's going.
Yeah.
And that would free up a heap of cash, and I could turn Fisher into Caldwell or whoever I wanted. So that would be a bit of an extreme move, but I don't think I can sit and watch Matty Rao for another week. It's just absolutely
Fair
killing
enough.
me. So
Nice.
it's on the cards.
All right. Stats boy.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I've still got Kruger. I'm going to send him out. I've got Josh Draper, which is a weird one, but he's got 2 70s and a 111 in the last 5 weeks out of nowhere. So he just rocketed up in price. I had him on my bench and I was like, he's not making any money. He was stuck on about 170K. He's up to 303,000 now. So I can trade him out. Made a little bit of money the other week. So I'm going to try and trade out Josh Draper and Kruger. Locke Rollinson, as Al just mentioned before, he can just be that, what is it, the floating donut? Sorry, I forgot what it's called. And then I've still got a way up between Luke Jackson or Charlie Kerner. I need to finish off my forward line. I think I'm leaning towards Luke Jackson because I've been disappointed with Charlie Kerner lately. But he could get a massive score this week. But I think I'm going to lean towards Luke Jackson. I think for the rest of the year, he's going to be more consistent than Charlie Kerner.
And just does give you that insurance in the
Yeah.
ruck if you need it, which
Yeah.
has obviously been
Which is
pretty
really
valuable
handy,
the
yeah.
last couple of weeks.
It's definitely saved me the last couple of weeks of keeping Luke Jackson,
Yeah.
just sort of sitting there, being able to swing him forward, back into the ruck, forward, back into the ruck.
Yeah. He could
Pretty
go really
handy.
well, as you mentioned, against the D. So I'm happy with that.
Against the Roos. Oh,
No, Luke Jackson, I'm
yeah,
talking about.
Charlie's
Luke
playing
Jackson.
against the Roos, which
Yes.
10 goals. And
But
yeah.
Jackson could kick 4
Luke
goals
Jackson
and have
kick
a lot of hit
forward,
outs
yeah.
as well. So yeah.
Love that. Good times, great memories. Hopefully Carlton just win. All right, that's it for the round 19 preview. Jeez, there's not too many rounds left here, Al. What's going on?
I know.
Oh, jeez. Either way, remember to subscribe to SuperCoach Plus. Take your game to the next level. Follow all things Code Sports for the latest AFL SuperCoach news and analysis. And if you haven't already, leave a rating review on Apple, Spotify, whatever. Subscribe to Code Sports on YouTube as well. Get notified whenever new episodes drop. For all the fun stuff, latest news, just general weird footy chat, get around the AFL Today Show with myself, Stats Boy, and a rotating cast of lunatics.
Yep.
But as usual, thanks to Al. Did a great job.
Thank you. Have to maybe plan another hike for this weekend just to...
Just decompress.
Exactly.
Just away we go. Thanks to Fantasy Freako for jumping on as well. And thanks to the Stats Boy. He's,
Thank you. Yeah. Good to be back on. It was good fun.
in off the bench like he's Lawson Humphries. All right. I've been Jaymz Clements. Have a great round 19 and happy super coaching.